I absolutely
Racism and sexism, you put it on the same.
I put that on the same level as white supremacy.
That can't work together because everyone's so offended. The only people who are actually offended by cultural appropriation don't really have anything else of meaning going on in their lives, it seems.
Well, that's rich.
Welcome back to Rattlesnake TV, guys. Today, we are going to be breaking down a debate between Will Witt and Amala Ekpanobi, former members of Prageru, taking on a woke professor on one of the dumbest ideas, honestly, in the world. That is cultural appropriation. This one gets pretty cringe, but also very satisfying when Will Witt comes in at the end with one of the best smackdown mic drops you'll ever see. So let's start off with the topic of food.
Angela, you say not only is food being appropriated, but it needs to stop. Tell me what you mean.
So when it comes to food, it's not necessarily that people of another culture can't enjoy other people's cuisines. That's not the point I'm making in terms of cultural appropriation. What I'm saying is the idea of profiting off of that. So like I mentioned, TikTok creators, for example. I recently wrote an article. I'm a food writer for a website called The Takeout. I wrote an article about TikTok creators sharing a specific drink called, well, they called it spa water, but it's actually agua fresca, which is something that comes from Mexican culture, Latino culture. It's a drink that is water, sugar, and like blended fruits and vegetables. So the issue there is that white creators on TikTok are sharing this particular drink. They're profiting off of it in the sense of they're gaining attention from it, they're gaining views, and they're also giving it a new name. This drink already existed. It's part of a culture. I feel like it's very simple to give credit where credit's due.
Mm-hmm. And compensation.
And compensation to who?
Well, for one thing, let's think about Jack Daniels and the enslaved person that created that recipe. It would be nice to let his family benefit from that rather than having Jack Daniels' family become millionaires.
So they would have to track down the creator of Agua Fresca, hope that they still have family alive, and give them some of the money they've made off the TikToks they created?
I don't think it's specifically that. It's not, I'm at least me personally.
You don't think they need to be compensated?
I'm saying that on TikTok in this particular sense, because social media plays a role in it. That's how things are shared nowadays. If this particular white creator is gaining, 2 million views from their recipe of spa water, knowing that it comes from a specific culture, I just think that's not right. I don't understand why that can't be acknowledged. She could have done her research. I mean,
so anytime we cook something, we need to research everything about it.
I think when you share it online, you have a responsibility, yes.
And if you're claiming it, it's yours. That's why when people create things, they do research to see what else is out there. You can only go so far to say, I didn't know. But once you know, you can't unknow that. That's what I'm saying. So there has to be credit. And we're not necessarily talking about there have to be reparations. We're talking about respect and humanity for somebody from whom you've stolen. Cultural appropriation is not criminal, but it is ethical. But people have a right to make a decision about what is ethical. And once you know, you can't unknow that, Dr. Phil.
One of the things that bothers me is when I see this happen on the internet. I mean, they just attack them, and that doesn't help.
But where?
And I mean, they really go after them.
But where might that be coming from, though? Where might that be coming from? Anger is an expression of something.
Hurt,
so where
fear,
might that,
frustration.
exactly. And if we talk about this, and that's what seems to be missing again from the conversation, is where's the history of this? And all of this is about education. All of this is about education. But I would like to think that each person here is a lifelong learner. And once you know this, you can't unknow this. So this is not about, which is what was brought up earlier about how are you supposed to know this? And nobody's trying to ask anybody to know everything. In fact, that's why we're still learning this. But if somebody has told you that this bothers me, the response should not be, well, it shouldn't. And I don't think anybody here is trying to say anybody is speaking on behalf of one. What I am saying is that we can educate it and learn more about what we are talking about so that we don't do it again.
Okay, guys, so just disclaimer, I'm obviously making this video with the purpose in mind of educating you guys about the do's and don'ts when it comes to cultural appropriation. And what we just heard here is very important, and I'm very glad to know it. And for you bigots out there for whom that message didn't land, let me enlighten you a little bit. Agua fresca, which is actually pronounced agua fresca, is a strictly Mexican beverage that is made out of water, fruit, and sugar. So next time you're thinking about being a white supremacist and blending these 3 very novel ingredients to make a sweet, refreshing summer beverage, or heaven forbid, make a TikTok about it, just stop for a second and think about all of the Mexicans that you're oppressing. And if for whatever reason you decide to go ahead with it and basically become a member of the KKK, then it is incumbent upon you to then find a Mexican to give money to. And guys, I'm in Thailand at the moment, and it's with a heavy heart that I inform you that there are a few little stands on the sides of the road here that are selling beverages that I have identified through a process of deductive reasoning and reverse engineering the ingredients in the drink to be agua fresca, whilst masquerading it as fruit juice. So obviously, I mean, understandably, there's a bit of righteous indignation on my part, and after recording this video, I'll be going down and shaking them down for some of their profits. Not on my watch, Nong Nong. I don't think so. Now let's get into a very interesting exchange indeed.
Kim Kardashian is part Armenian. Is it okay for her to wear cornrows?
I personally think that it depends on what boundaries that culture has set. So I can speak for Black culture. The reason why, you know, some of us are offended and have problems with white women wearing braids is because it's documented. Black women are getting fired from their jobs for wearing braids. We are called ghetto. We are not seen as professional with our natural cultural hairstyles that are part of Black culture. And then when white women wear them, they are glorified, praised, and even sometimes have the credit attributed to them. So that discrepancy is where the issue comes into play.
If I could respond to that, I think you can speak for yourself as an individual as far as whether or not you are offended by something, but you can't speak on behalf of the entire Black culture. There are plenty of Black people who watched what Kim Kardashian did and thought the braids looked absolutely fine. And again, I do think imitating is flattery. She didn't step up and say that she's invented the hairstyle. If people attribute that to her, that's something that you do on an individual basis.
I feel like it's important to understand the difference between imitating and actually appropriating. So imitating is like, you like my nails, you go do it, you copy it. Imitating, you like my shoes, buy the same shoes. Sure. Appropriating is when you are copying something of a culture that is not yours, and it's inappropriate. You are disrespecting the boundary that that culture has set.
Guys, just a quick announcement here. The fact that you're watching my content means that you're actually appropriating my thoughts. And it goes without saying that it's a boundary of mine that I would like you to respect, and obviously it makes me a victim. So you're probably wondering how you can pay reparations, and the way that you can do that is just to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Back to the clips.
If I copied your shoes tomorrow because I liked them, would that not be appropriation?
I have not set a boundary against you about the shoes I wear. I don't face discrimination or racism because of the shoes that I wear.
So if I, as a biracial, half-Black woman, go to Kim Kardashian and say, you know what, that's not a boundary that I've set for you. You may wear cornrows. And I am essentially a Black person who has told her I don't have that boundary. Is it then wrong for her to wear the braids the next day?
That comes into play. If you do that, you're going to ignore there's countless documentation of a lot of Black women being discriminated and experiencing racism because of braids. So by doing that, you're kind of just dismissing and ignoring the Black women that are struggling with this issue, especially because you have to think Kim Kardashian has an extremely large platform.
Wow, that was really something. This lady just said, quote, I can speak for Black culture.
I can speak for Black culture.
Which is a remarkable responsibility to be bestowed upon her. First of all, when she says that she can speak for a group of people, this implies that there was some sort of democratic election or referendum that's taken place to decide that. And secondly, it's not just African American culture that she speaks for. No. It's Black culture. So obviously that means that she also speaks for Indigenous Australians, Papua New Guineans, the people of the Mbuti tribe who are pygmies that reside in the Ituri forest in eastern Congo, as well as the uncontacted Sentinelese tribe of North Sentinel Island, and so many more. To be the individual who is given the task and the responsibility of setting the boundaries, as she said, for all of Black culture must be quite the job, because, I mean, I could be wrong, but it appears as though a lot of these cultures aren't perfectly aligned in their values. And getting to the point where it can all be centralized and where she can set the boundaries and the parameters that she's talking about must be quite the job. She's a smarter woman than I. Now let's watch the professor on the panel coming in hot.
These are all celebrities who have been called out, criticized, and condemned for cultural appropriation. Has anyone here ever called someone out for cultural appropriation? You two, you have? You have?
Yep.
Has anybody here ever thought twice about wearing something or doing something, even cooking something, out of fear of being accused of appropriation? You have?
Yes.
Yeah, what was it?
My daughter had braids and she wanted me to get braids that were just like hers.
Why her but not you?
She's half black and half white.
Okay.
And so I just think that some things should stick with those cultures.
Well, no matter whether you believe it's harmful or you think people should just be allowed to do what they want, there is no doubt this is a hot button topic that people are passionate about. Dr. Neil Lester, a professor of English at Arizona State University, right?
I am, yes.
And you've published, lectured, and taught extensively the area of African American studies. What do you think about appropriation? Do you think this is a real thing, something that people need to be cognizant of? And if so, why?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, because if we, in fact, are trying to look at the humanity of other people, and we are trying to live in a place where we are trying to be respectful and mindful of folks, then we need to be aware of things that are important to other cultures that don't necessarily look like us or share the same values. So it is a thing, and people need to be aware of.
Can anybody appropriate?
Anybody can appropriate, yes.
Not just white people?
Absolutely. Appropriation is intersectional. So old people can appropriate youth culture. Youth culture can appropriate old folks. People who are not incarcerated can impersonate, prisoners or those who are incarcerated. Men appropriate women's attire for the sake of funny and mocking. So absolutely anybody can do it, and everybody on some level may have flirted with it.
I absolutely love it when these professors come out of hiding, just briefly, momentarily, and actually have to engage with smart people. You see, in his environment, in his echo chamber, saying things like cultural appropriation is intersectional makes all of his colleagues and friends sit back and think, what a brilliant mind. When objectively and in the real world, the points that he's making are painfully stupid. He's basically just said to them, anytime you do anything, wear anything, cook anything, or anything that is typically not done by people of your identity group, whatever that may be, you are engaging in cultural appropriation. Now just think about how many different variables there are to you as an individual. You can't, because it's impossible to even quantify. And now think of the things that you do from day to day, and just think about the things that you can conceivably do or eat or wear. Music you can listen to, weddings that you can go to. All of these are a cultural custom of some sort and have some sort of cultural lineage. But according to the woke logic, or lack thereof, in order to be able to enjoy these things, you must first check with the woke police to see if anybody is going to be offended. And how about language? I mean, much of the words that we use are from Old English or Germanic or Greek or Latin. Must we now research the etymology of every single word that we use before we formulate our sentences? And also, I hate to break it to the wokies on the panel, but the act of interlocking your hair that people call braiding is not something that's easy on one culture. Ancient Chinese maidens used to keep their hair in braids until their 15th birthday. Here are some ancient Egyptian artworks showing a braiding conga line. Ancient Greeks also used to wear them. Perhaps if our friend here were wanting to be the change that he would like to see in the world, then he would let his hair down and pay some respect to those who went before him. And you guys might think that was bad, but what comes out of his mouth next is even worse.
Okay, but a lot of the time that people that I've seen are called out for this, it's not that they were making fun or mocking in some way. It was just that they had adopted a fashion or a style or whatever.
I would say that's a performance. So if somebody's culture and somebody's identity becomes a performance, then it's reductive. So if you're reducing, for example, say the civil rights movement to an afro, and you wear that, or you wear dreadlock wigs, that Rastafarians may wear, you do that because it's edgy, because it's cool, but ultimately because it's not you, and you're getting some kind of cultural capital from that by doing it.
And who's hurt by that?
Well, it's not a matter of who's hurt by it, it's who's being disrespected by it.
Well, who's being disrespected by it?
A whole culture of people whose identities are wrapped in whatever you're dressing into and can then take off.
Amala, you don't agree?
I don't, no.
You think worrying about appropriation is a waste of time?
I think not only is it somewhat a waste of time, but it's nearly impossible. You just mentioned there are nearly hundreds of ways that one could appropriate somebody else's culture or their livelihood. And to expect any one human being to keep on top of that throughout their entire life, I think, is an unrealistic ask. And I think imitation is a form of flattery. I appreciate my food by eating it. I appreciate the hair that I wear by wearing it, by putting on the clothes that I wear. And every single item around us in this room could probably be attributed to a certain culture. Do we have to constantly worry about what culture we gain things from?
Does intention have anything to do with it?
I guess I didn't hear anything about anybody worrying about it. What I hear about when I think about and talk about cultural appropriation is people becoming more aware of it. We could say the same thing about racism, sexism, homophobia. Just because you can't solve it and don't see it at every corner doesn't mean we shouldn't be aware of it and trying to address it.
Do you really put those on the same level?
I absolutely
Racism
do.
and sexism,
Absolutely.
you put it on the same level as cultural appropriation?
That's exactly.
So if somebody wears their hair like you're wearing it, you put that on the same level as racism?
Absolutely. Wow. I put that on the same level as white supremacy, because white supremacy is intersectional.
This is the guy who is responsible for educating people who are about to go into the world. And then we wonder why incessant wokeness permeates every corner of our culture. And if there's anything that this says to me, it's that woke Western ideology is absolutely starving for things to call racist and white supremacist. They are mining and excavating for reasons to be victims. They're under every stone. They're looking in every nook and cranny, and yet they appear empty-handed. So they must start conjuring their own narratives out of thin air to stay relevant and to keep the victimhood industrial complex alive. And so they will speak about cultural appropriation and how it's intersectional. It's not white supremacy per se, but it's kind of like on the same level as white supremacy. You see, these days, white people have formulated ways to show their white supremacy. These days, it's not pitchforks and white robes, it's braided hair and agua fresca. And now for the bit where Will Witt opens up a can of verbal ass whooping on this professor. But before we get there, I'm going to lead this last bit in with a few little snippets from the video that they're talking about, where Will Witt tests the waters to see who are the ones really getting offended by cultural appropriation.
Hola amigos, this is Will Witt with Prageru. Today we're at UCLA talking to college students and on Olvera Street talking to Hispanics in honor of Halloween and to see if my outfit is offensive. Find my outfit offensive?
Yeah.
You find it offensive? Do you find it offensive?
Maybe a little.
Do you think my outfit is offensive?
Are you Mexican?
No.
Yes.
I think it reaffirms stereotypes that are offensive to people.
You think people really think Mexican people are like this and carry around marachas?
No, I don't think people actually think that.
Do you find my outfit offensive?
Yes. Yeah.
Why?
Because it's not your culture?
Cultural appropriation? Why do you say that?
Because you're not, like, Mexican.
Can I just ask you, do you like my costume?
I like your mustache.
Do you?
Monthly.
Does my outfit offend you?
You look, no. You look nice.
Thank you. Yeah. Do you like my outfit?
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
Does my outfit offend you?
No, not at all.
Some people get offended by what I'm wearing.
No, it's not. It's not offensive. I think it's, you're in the right atmosphere.
Yeah. Lo único dice de mostacho, no original.
No original.
We can share styles and clothing and food is a very beautiful thing to be celebrated.
But sharing and then having somebody else get credit for it. See, that's what the issue is. The issue is I've done my homework and you're going to copy it and the teacher's going to praise you for doing the homework. That's what cultural appropriation is.
Okay, well, Will Witt is a former Prageru University personality and current editor-in-chief at the Florida Standard. Now, he joins us virtually. Will, what prompted you to make that video?
Well, really, I made that video to prove anti-white ivory tower professors like the one in your studio wrong. I mean, this video and the others that I've made like it with Native Americans, with Mexicans, with the Chinese you just watched are irrefutable evidence that people like that professor are exactly wrong on cultural appropriation. And if we want to go back and we want to talk about the hairstyles and things, just bringing this up, I mean, I've seen people get offended by braids and say, oh, you know, braids are a black people thing and white people can't wear braids. It's called a Dutch braid. It was from back in Nordic times, old Nordic times, with white people, with Vikings, would wear braids, yet people want to come and claim that it's some part of their culture now. No, you can't claim that something is just a part of your culture either. It's for people to share and celebrate and use so you can actually have a society that is cohesive and works together as a melting pot, not all these different groups that can't work together because everyone's so offended. The only people who are actually offended by cultural appropriation don't really have anything else of meaning going on in their lives, it seems.
Yeah.
Well, that's rich.
You say people who get offended by
rich.
cultural appropriation are people mostly not from that culture. Has that been your experience, whatever the culture was?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, one of the most important videos that I ever did with Prageru is when I went to the Navajo Indian Reservation in Window Rock, Arizona. And all of these Navajos that I talked to didn't want other people to get offended for them on their behalf. They wanted to feel responsible for their own culture. They didn't want someone coming and, for lack of a better word, white knighting them and saying, hey, we need to come here and save you. You know, all these people wearing headdresses and things or a feather in their hair, we need to come and save you. They didn't want that. They wanted people to come and say Geronimo. They wanted planes named the Apache helicopter. They wanted the Washington Redskins as their sports team to celebrate their culture. They didn't want other people getting offended on their behalf. It's a thing created by elitist white people who don't really ever talk to these people in these cultures.
Beautifully said and well done, sir. I've never met an accomplished and well-rounded individual who's sitting there complaining about cultural appropriation. This is strictly reserved for the type of individual who is desperately seeking something to be offended by. I mean, white girls in braids, not a great look. Wouldn't recommend it aesthetically. But if you want to go and experience other cultures, cook some delicious tacos, dress like a Hungarian folk dancer and go and shake a leg, or use some Vietnamese textiles, then go for your life. One of the beautiful things about true diversity, which is the difference in culture between countries that's been formed over hundreds and thousands, in some cases, of years, is that we get to explore and enjoy things that are novel and new, and it feeds the soul. And in turn, we can do the same by allowing people to enjoy whatever our culture is. So guys, if you want to join the locals community, support the channel and help me avoid censorship, you can hit that link at the top of the comments, and also check the bio for all my other links, socials and all that. If you want to subscribe to the channel, click right here. And if you want to watch another video, click right here. Until next time, I'm Jake. This is RattlesnakeTV, keeping you armed and dangerous.